This assessment is what psychologists and psychometricians, who are the people who study the measurement of behavior, they call this a core traits tool or a true traits tool. What does that mean in layman's terms? It means comfort zones. If I could just show up and just be at my best, most natural self, what would that look like? Now, that doesn't mean that that's very different than personality, right? Personality, I can show up very different in a social setting than I do in a professional setting if I so choose. If I score, let's say, a 4 somewhere on this graph, that doesn't mean that I can't act like an 8. I might be able to. The key is that anytime I have to stretch and get outside of my comfort zones, it adds stress and it depletes energy. We can all do it. We can all do it to varying degrees. Some of these traits we're really good at stretching at. Some of these traits we're not good at stretching in. And we're all different. It's the beauty of humanness, right? I like to call that stretchability factor the rubber band theory. Some people are, if they scored a 5, they are the little teeny tiny braces rubber bands. If you ask them to stretch to a 6, they can't do it. They're going to snap. Some people are those giant industrial rubber bands. They can go from a 1 to a 10, sustain it and hold it and be just fine. Unfortunately, with this tool, I can't tell you how far someone can stretch or for how long they can sustain that stretch. What we can give you is interview questions for you to determine, have they ever stretched before? Have they been successful while they were stretching? And for how long have they been able to sustain that stretch? That's what the interview questions are designed to do. We do have a tool called the GenOS Emotional Intelligence tool that measures, can they stretch? That stretchability factor is about emotional intelligence. It's about understanding, being self-aware about who I am and how far do I need to stretch to get an intended outcome. I tell people all the time, you get to be who you are. Own who you are. Don't try to be something that you're not. I'm sure you've all had people tell you that at some point in your life, well, you just got to get uncomfortable, right? You got to stretch and get outside those comfort zones, and it's about growth. Well, that's absolutely true if the intended outcome is something that you want. If the intended outcome is not something that you believe in or that you desire or that you want to achieve, don't try to get outside that comfort zone. It's not necessary. We as individuals need to put ourselves in situations where we can be our best, most natural selves, because that's where we're going to be the most productive and the most successful. Now, is there ever any job that's going to fit anyone 100% of the time? No. There's always going to be that one thing or those two things that are difficult, that are I don't enjoy that part of my job, or I really struggle working with that individual. But if for the most part, I fit the job and I fit the team and I fit the manager that I'm working with, then I can get outside my comfort zone for those situations, for that particular individual, for whatever. The key is to not be trying to put that round peg into a square hole, right? This is also a tool. It is only a tool. It should only be 1/3 of your hiring process. We should not ever use a tool as a hire, don't hire assessment. Skills and qualifications are still absolutely important. The interview is still absolutely important. This is designed to tell you where your potential risk areas are, so that you can go interview and probe further, so that you can reference check further around those areas for each candidate where where their particular risk areas are. Every candidate is going to bring some risk. The key is for the clients to be able to look at which area can I manage the best, right? Which candidate brings me the least amount of risk, especially working with that particular hiring manager. Some hiring managers are really good at managing maybe sociability, and others are really good at managing accommodation. But they, after using this tool for for any length of time, they're going to quickly learn, I'm not good at that. That doesn't work for me. Do not bring me that kind of a candidate. But it'll take some time for them to get there. But what they're going to learn from a leadership perspective is, how do I situationally lead my teams? Because now they're going to have really an employee handbook about how to motivate, how to, what their potential weaknesses are, and what they're going to have to coach and develop for each individual on their team. So this is really an all-encompassing tool. And doing executive search is exactly how I started using this. I'd done recruiting in-house, and then I moved to executive search, and we were looking for some data. How do we bring data to this process? How do we make this really warm and fuzzy thing a little bit more of a science? And we found this tool, and our clients were asking us on a regular basis, we want to use this all the time, not just when we hire you to do a search. How do we do that? And so that's how we started this organization. So it's a really powerful tool. And there's a lot to it, but it's simple to use. That's the other thing that I love about it. So this 1 through 10, please feel free to jump in if you have questions, or if I'm going too fast or too slow, please let me know. This 1 through 10 graph that you're looking at is a normed bell curve. It is normed to the entire working population. So if I was to assess the entire working population, 68% of people are going to fall between this 4 to 7 range. The further I get on the outskirts of this bell curve, the more unique those traits become. So I like to use the example of independence. If someone scores a 1 on independence, that means they're less independent than 97.5% of the population. If they score a 10 on independence, that means they're more independent than 97.5% of the population. Is either one of those good or bad, right or wrong? No, it's dependent on what we're asking them to do, right? If I'm going to have someone who's going to be starting a brand new territory and they're going to be 500 miles away from the office and any support, I want a 9 or a 10 in that role. If I'm going to have someone be a project manager and they're going to have to negotiate deadlines and build consensus and inspire a team, I want a 1 or a 2 in that role, because this side of that scale is about team building. It's about team. I want to win together and lose together. There are pluses and minuses to both sides of all of these scales. There is nothing inherently bad or good about any of them. That's the important thing, which is why I never send someone their graph first, because they look at it and they go, oh, 1 is bad, 10 is good. No, and you've caused all this anxiety that doesn't need to exist. So I absolutely do go over their scores with them, typically not candidates, but right before the offer. I want to say, here's where you're going to have to stretch. Here's where you're going to have to get uncomfortable. And here's how the organization is going to support you in that. Here's how they're going to coach and develop you around that stretch. Are you game? Are you in? Are you willing to do that? Because there are some people that will literally say, you know what, I've been stretching like that for the last 10 years and I don't want to do it anymore. I'm done. And so it allows you to really have a rich conversation around those behaviors that matter, around those relational things that matter. Because when a person leaves an organization, they leave not because of something that could have been discovered on the resume or the application. They leave because they don't fit the job, which is, you may be putting an introvert into a sales job, right? That's a really simple, easy one. Not that introverts can't be successful salespeople, but they need to be getting uncomfortable on a regular basis. The second reason people leave organizations is because they don't fit the manager. You have an independent contributor who's working with a micromanager. That's not going to work long term. Or they don't fit the team. Again, an independent contributor who is on a team where they make decisions together, they win together, they lose together, and oh, by the way, they also go out after work and hang out together. That's not going to work long term, right? These are the reasons people leave organizations. So we want to have very poignant conversations around those areas that could be rubs for the organization. Questions so far? I know this is a lot. Okay. All right. We're doing good. I'm going to keep moving then. So let me explain these 3 areas, and then we're going to start looking at your actual candidate data. The thinking style section is all about how quickly do I process information? So this is not IQ. We are not measuring intelligence. I'm not measuring how smart anybody is. Smart and IQ is about capacity. It's about how big is your boat? How much stuff can you put in your boat? We're not measuring that. What we're measuring is how big is the opening to your boat? How quickly can I fill it? So 1s, 2s, and 3s are your teaspoon people. You're going to give them A. You're going to let them chew on A for a little while. Then you're going to come back and you're going to give them B. 8s, 9s, and 10s are your fire hose people. You're going to give them A and B, and they're going to come up with C, D, E, and F on their own. Both sides will eventually get to Z. That's the capacity piece that we're not measuring, right? We're only measuring the speed. I know presidents of companies, doctors, lawyers, CPAs who are 1s, 2s, and 3s. They're just as smart. They just have to read the paragraph 2 or 3 more times before they get it. But once they've got it, it's in, right? That's the difference between the left-hand side and the right-hand side in thinking style. I like to describe this as the horsepower of the engine of the car. 1s, 2s, and 3s are your Chevys and your Fords and your Toyotas and your Hondas. They're great cars. They get good gas mileage. They're reliable. They last forever. But the 8s, 9s, and 10s are your Ferraris. Super fast, great for entertainment value, beautiful cars. But if I take a Ferrari and I put them on a racetrack with a whole bunch of Hondas, the Ferrari's going, this isn't a race, I'm bored and I'm out of here. And the Hondas are going, get off my track, you're in the way. The reverse is also true. If I take a Honda and I put them on a racetrack with a bunch of Ferraris, the Honda's going, I have the pedal to the floor. It doesn't matter how bad I want this or how hard I try, I'm never going to be in this race. And the Ferraris are going, get off my track, you're in the way. It's about how quickly we take in information, process it, and can turn it around and do something with it. So if we're measuring how quickly we people take in information, guess what it's also measuring? How quickly we give information. Because we're going to give it at the speed that's most comfortable for us to receive it. So people go, oh, well, I want to be an 8, 9, or 10. Everybody wants to be an 8, 9, or 10, right? Because faster's better. In society, our society says faster's better. Well, not necessarily. Remember, there are pluses and minuses to both sides of all of these scales. So what happens is the Ferrari walks into the room, and if you look at the bell curve, the majority of the room is to the left of them. And so they're going to walk in and they're going to say, hey, go get me ice cream. And everybody's going to truck to the store and come back with a tub of chocolate ice cream. And the Ferrari goes, no, 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 I wanted an ice cream sundae with whipped cream nuts and a cherry. But you didn't say that. You said ice cream, because they've already processed ahead 6 steps, and that's what ice cream means. So there are challenges with being on either extreme. Does that make sense? Questions so far? Okay, so that's what we're measuring in the thinking style section. Let's move to behavioral traits. Behavioral traits are about how are they going to show up? What are the behaviors that you're going to see while they're doing the duties and responsibilities of the job? So I like to use an example of 2 administrative assistants who have the exact same duties and responsibilities. But how they go about doing those duties and responsibilities might be very different. One may answer the phone very sugary sweet. Hi, how are you today? How can I help you? And one may answer the phone very direct. How can I help you today? Both successful, both productive, just different. One may go about their day in a haphazard way, kind of taking things as they come at them. And one may go about their day in a very structured manner. Both successful, both productive, just different. That's what we're measuring in this behavioral traits section. What behaviors are we going to see while they're doing the job? Questions about that? Okay. And then the last section is occupational interests. This is about passion. It's about motivation. What do I like to do? What gets me out of bed and excited to come to work every day? I'm sure you can think about things that you like to do that you're not good at. And I'm sure you can think about things that you don't like to do that you're really good at. Don't confuse this section for capability. Just because someone scores high on people service does not necessarily mean they're good at it. It simply means they like to do it. They could be good at it. We're just not measuring that. We're only measuring the passion and motivation piece. Now, why is occupational interest important? It's important because up here in the behavioral traits section, if I've got to get uncomfortable to do something, I'm more likely to get uncomfortable if I'm passionate about what I'm doing, right? If I'm not passionate about it and I don't care, why am I going to get uncomfortable?